Just ahead of bank earnings, Morgan Stanley Chief Executive James Gorman is rattling Wall Street with some comments to the Financial Times saying there's too much capacity, i.e. too many people working in banking, and that the people working there are paid way too much. So what we've been thinking about is exactly what that means in real terms. It's, we've looked at whether returns justify the comp. Gorman talks about how, if you raise comp when revenue's going down to try and keep people, it's the heads I win, tails you lose game. Tell me.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's nothing new in what he's saying. What's new is that you actually, vaguely new is you've got chief executives finally admitting that there are too many people out there.
Right, we've seen it from Deutsche Bank as well, and some others.
So we've done this on and off for one or two banks in the past. We'll say, okay, let's look at their pay. How much are they giving out as a percentage of revenue per quarter, per year, whatever?
It's been around 40–50% over the years.
It's come down a bit since the crisis, but just generally say it's about 40 to 45% of comp. We're looking at investment banks, or investment banking firms like Goldman and Morgan Stanley. It gets a bit more complicated when you get to the likes of JP and Bank of America. We've got to do some sort of subtle calculation.
Right, but it's about looking at what would happen
so
if we needed ROE somewhere. What would that mean? How much got paid out to revenue?
Exactly. And what we've seen in the past is that you can very easily, if you want, pay your shareholders more or give them more share of returns by cutting the pay you give the employees and still leave them earning a fair whack of money. So what I did, I sort of put this together for several banks, and I looked at, say, Goldman Sachs, which at the moment is set, according to Reuters estimates, to have a return on equity this year of around 8 to 8.5%. So the magic number here is 10%. That's what most people in the industry think
is the
basic cost of capital for banks. So let's try and get above that for shareholders. Otherwise, why would a shareholder long term keep his or her money in the firm? So at the moment, I think Goldman's paying somewhere around 40–42% of revenue out in comp. If you drop that to around 35%, that's where they finally tip over this magic 10%. Now, for Morgan Stanley, it's a lot harder. Now, they've got other noise in there. They've got this awful, when your liabilities drop in value, you've got to increase the amount of money.
But there's been a lot of noise from shareholders too, right, Agnes? I mean, there's been a lot of pressure coming from a lot of different places.
Yeah, because I think, the shares have been, a lot of the banks, they're still trading below book. But I guess my question too is, like, when we look at things like it's in the aggregate, first of all, I would imagine, Anthony, this is going to be hard for banks to actually get their numbers to where they need to be. But I'm also wondering, like, does this mean the chief executives and some of the senior executives who make a lot of money, does that mean that they also are going to have to start thinking about cutting their pay?
That's a good point. I mean, is it across the board, or is it kind of concentrated in the big?
I would assume you've got to concentrate it at the top end initially. Right, and by that I mean the managing directors and everyone, to make sure that everyone knows that everyone's taking a hit. But it can go all the way down as well. I mean, you look around the money that a first-year associate is going to be promised. I quite like that kind of money, frankly. It'd be brilliant. But why should they be paid such a large bonus, 25, 30, 40% of their salary when they haven't actually achieved much yet? So I think it's got to go all the way through. But you're right, because the big issue is, will they do this? And the big fear is always, well, if we do this, we'll lose to competitors. Well, all banks are facing the same pressure. Most hedge funds and others have come in to take people out who they think are good for their business. There's not a huge amount of places for people to go, and there's overcapacity. So actually, if anything, this is the time where pushing to try and get that pay down further is the thing to do. But whether we'll see it, I'm skeptical.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. We will look forward to playing with the calculator next week, and we'll be back with more Breaking Views on Monday.